I never thought Thanksgiving dinner would end with my own son raising a glass and calling me the burden at this table. But there he was, Michael, my baby boy, now 39, with a wine glass in hand and a smirk on his face that I'd never seen before. "To family," he said, pausing dramatically. "And to the burden at this table." The room froze. I heard a fork clink against porcelain. Jennifer laughed. I didn't laugh. I stared down at the linen napkin folded on my lap, white and trembling, not from the cold, from humiliation, from rage, from something deeper I couldn't name yet. I didn't say a word. I just pushed my chair back, slow and deliberate, and stood up. My knee ached, the one they said they'd help me recover from. That lie stung now more than the injury ever had. "I'll get the door," I said softly. Michael blinked, confused for a moment. "Door?" I didn't answer. I walked through the dining room, past the laughing guests who suddenly wouldn't meet my eyes, through the hallway decorated with photos of their smiling faces. Not one of me. Then I opened the front door, and there she stood, Karen Elizabeth Moore, a notary, dressed in charcoal gray, with a leather portfolio tucked under one arm. "Right on time," I said. My voice was steady now, strong. Because this wasn't spontaneous, this had been planned. Carefully, strategically, Karen stepped inside. "You ready?" I nodded. Because they thought I was just a burden, a charity case with bad knees and fading memories. But they forgot I was Patricia Lynn Davis, retired accountant, widow of Richard Davis, legal owner of the Asheville cabin they were secretly trying to sell. And tonight, the reckoning begins. 7 months earlier, I moved into their house because Michael said they wanted to take care of me. It was April. My right knee had given out, nothing dramatic, just years of wear, and the surgery left me wobbly for weeks. Michael and Jennifer offered to help. "Just until you're back on your feet," they said. "Family takes care of each other." And I believed them. That's the part that shames me now, how easy I made it for them. I sold my condo, my quiet little place with the sunroom I loved, and handed Michael the check to invest wisely. He insisted it would go into a joint account to cover shared expenses. He called it smart. I called it trust. I arrived with 2 suitcases, a walker, and my late husband's manila folder, the one with the original cabin deed inside. That folder had been untouched since Richard passed. I tucked it into the back of the closet in the guest room, not realizing how important it would become. Back then, Jennifer smiled when I walked through the door, helped me up the stairs, made tea in the evenings. But now I see it differently. That wasn't kindness, that was positioning. But on November 20th, just 1 week before Thanksgiving, I opened my email and froze. Subject line, "Your listing is live." A real estate alert for my Asheville cabin. High-resolution photos. Price, $1.2 million. Contact, Jennifer's maiden name, now using her new license. My name was on the listing, my signature, but I never signed anything. At first, I thought it was a scam. Then I noticed the agency, Davidson Realty, Michael's college friend's firm. No coincidence. I called Michael into the living room, showed him the screen. He barely glanced at it. "Oh, that? Spam," he said, taking the laptop from my lap like I was a toddler with a toy. "Don't worry about it, Mom." Then he patted my shoulder. That's when it snapped into place. Not just the cabin, all of it. The borrowed jewelry, the restricted spending, the sudden warmth. It wasn't care, it was containment. They weren't protecting me. They were preparing to erase me. That email wasn't a mistake. It was the final piece in a pattern I'd been trying not to see. They'd been chipping away at me for months. It started small. Michael told me to stop using my credit card. "Let me set you up with a weekly allowance," he said, $50 in cash, in a manila envelope. Like I was a teenager. I said nothing. Jennifer borrowed my jewelry, 2 gold bangles Richard gave me on our 25th anniversary, said it was just for a fundraiser. I found one on her vanity a month later, tangled with cheap costume pieces. I didn't say a word. And then the nicknames. Mama P, when they wanted something. Forgetful Patricia, when I asked a question twice. Once, Michael laughed and said I was drifting, then looked at Jennifer like they were in on a joke I wasn't supposed to get. Still, I let it slide. Told myself they were tired, stressed, just adjusting to me being here. I made excuses like mothers always do, even for grown children who don't deserve them. But the cabin? That was different. That was sacred. It wasn't just a property. It was where Richard and I spent our last anniversary before the cancer came back, where we scattered his ashes beneath the sugar maples he planted in '89. That land held more than value. It held him, and now my son, my own flesh, had listed it for sale without my consent. A $1.2 million betrayal, signed in my name. That was the moment the shame flipped into fury. I stood up, walked to the kitchen, and stared out the window into the dark backyard. Jennifer's new garden lights flickered like little lies in the dirt. "No more," I whispered to no one. When I turned back, Michael was already up the stairs. Jennifer was on the couch, phone in hand, thumbs tapping. "I think I'll head up," I said calmly. She didn't look up. "Sure, Mom." I climbed the stairs slowly, the ache in my knee barely noticeable compared to the throb in my chest. Back in my room, I reached under the bed and pulled out my small fireproof box. Inside, I still had the original cabin deed. Untouched. Clean. In my name only. That night, I didn't sleep. I waited until morning, and then I made the call. To an old friend. My former accountant colleague. I didn't need comfort. I needed a witness. It had been years since I'd seen Stanley Monroe. We used to crunch numbers over pastrami sandwiches in a Raleigh tax office that smelled like toner and burnt coffee. He was slower now, balder too, but his mind? Still razor sharp. We met at a diner off Wendover. I wore my Sunday coat and brought the cabin deed in a manila envelope. Stanley didn't ask about Michael. He just waited until the waitress poured our coffee, then nodded for me to speak. I laid the envelope on the Formica table. "This is still mine," I said. "I never signed anything, but someone's trying to make it look like I did." Stanley didn't touch the papers right away, just looked at me with those shrewd gray eyes. "You want my professional opinion or personal outrage?" "Both." He cracked a smile. "Then let's start with outrage." As he read, my hand stayed steady around the chipped coffee cup. The clink of silverware and hum of the jukebox faded. When he reached the end, he exhaled through his nose, a sound I'd heard years ago when a client tried to hide gambling losses in a church fund. "They're sloppy," he said. "Too confident. Probably didn't expect you to check." I felt something cold harden into shape inside me. It wasn't rage anymore. It was readiness. "I kept the deed after Richard died," I told him, tucked it behind our old tax files. "You know what else I kept?" I reached into my bag and slid out a neatly labeled folder. The bank statements, property tax receipts, utility bills, all in my name. No power of attorney. No transfer. No consent. He flipped through the folder, nodding slowly. "You were the numbers person, weren't you?" I met his eyes. "I handled everything after Richard passed. The estate, the taxes. I knew every cent down to the penny. And I could see it now. How much they'd underestimated me. The careful smile Jennifer always wore. Michael's casual dismissals. They'd mistaken my silence for senility. They forgot I used to run audits that made CEOs sweat. "I need a notary," I said quietly. "One I can trust." Stanley scribbled a name and number on the back of his receipt. "Karen Moore. Doesn't miss a detail." I folded the paper and tucked it inside my wallet. As I stood to leave, he said, "They don't see you coming, do they?" "No," I said, pulling on my gloves. "But they will." I left that diner not as a mother betrayed. I left as an accountant preparing for audit. And they were the ones about to be itemized. Karen Elizabeth Moore had the kind of handshake that said, "I don't blink first." Her office smelled like ink and lemon polish. The walls were lined with framed certifications, not a single photo, just credentials, stacked like armor. She didn't waste time with small talk. I liked that. "I was told you're discreet," I said, placing the folder on her desk. Karen opened it, brows already tightening. Stanley said it was urgent. And he doesn't exaggerate. She flipped through the documents methodically. I watched her eyes scan my deed, the real estate listing printout, the forged signature, shaky, misshapen, but close enough to fool someone who wanted to be fooled. This signature was traced, she muttered, leaning in. I've seen 3 like this in elder fraud cases this year. They're getting bolder when the victim lives down the hall, I said. She looked up, sharp. They live with you? In their home, I corrected. They invited me in after my knee surgery, told me to sell my condo, said I'd be safer here. That was April. By June, they started managing my mail. By September, I wasn't even allowed to set the thermostat. Karen pushed back in her chair, exhaling. They're building a narrative. Yes, I said, the frail old woman who can't manage her own affairs. She shook her head. They forgot something important. What's that? Karen smiled. Not soft, not sympathetic, strategic. You kept the originals. You documented everything. And now you're sitting in a notary's office instead of sobbing on your couch. That made me sit up straighter. I don't want to just stop the sale, I said. I want it voided. Officially. Publicly. You're not just protecting property, Karen said. You're making a record they can't rewrite. She tapped the desk twice, then opened her drawer and pulled out a form. This is a preliminary affidavit. I'll notarize your statement and verify the forged signature. But you'll need a lawyer, someone who knows real estate fraud. I already called him, I said. We meet Monday. Karen nodded, impressed. Then let's begin. She unscrewed the cap from her pen, and I signed the affidavit with the same hand that once wrote out tuition checks, paid for Michael's first car, balanced my entire life without applause. Karen sealed it with a heavy, satisfying stamp. As she handed it back, my phone buzzed on the table. A text from Jennifer. Don't worry about that email, Mom. We've got it covered. Covered. Like a body in a ditch. I didn't reply. I just stared at the screen until the letters stopped glowing. They still thought I was blind. That's fine, because now I had witnesses. By the time I got home, Jennifer was waiting in the foyer like a receptionist at a funeral. Arms crossed, smile like plastic wrap. Got your little email, she said. Do we need to talk? She didn't wait for an answer. Just spun on her heel and walked toward the kitchen. I followed, slower, knee still stiff but no longer an excuse. Michael was already there, elbows on the marble island like he owned every atom of air in the house. I thought we agreed you wouldn't stress yourself, he said. No, hello, just disappointment, weaponized. Stress myself? I dropped my purse on the counter. By looking into a property that legally belongs to me? Jennifer opened the fridge, slammed it shut. We were trying to help you let go. The cabin is too much. Isolated. Old. And worth over $1 million, I said. Michael flinched. I let that land. Who told you that, he said, voice tightening. Stanley. Then Karen Moore, licensed notary. She says the sale's fraudulent. And now, so does my attorney. The silence that followed was thick and sour. Jennifer broke it with a forced laugh. Oh, come on, Mom. You're overreacting. We started the process to save you the stress. It's not like we finalized anything. I pulled the forged deed from my bag and slid it across the counter. You didn't finalize it, but you were close. Michael didn't touch the paper, just stared at it like it might catch fire. We're family, he said finally, softly. Do you really want to drag us through legal hell over a misunderstanding? You didn't misunderstand my signature, I said. You stole it. That's when Jennifer snapped. You're being ridiculous. You live here for free, we take care of you, and this is how you repay us? By acting like some TV crime victim? I'm not acting, I said. And starting Monday, I won't be living here either. That shut them both up. I didn't say where I was going. Let them sit with the silence. The last thing I saw before I turned was Jennifer's eyes darting to Michael. Not in panic, but calculation. Like this was a negotiation. Not anymore. The next morning, I brewed coffee before either of them woke. The house felt different now. Quieter, but not peaceful, like the silence after a fuse is lit. I sipped from my chipped mug, the one Jennifer hated, said it looked cheap. I liked it because it had weight. Solid. Honest. That's when I noticed the trash bin hadn't been taken out. Jennifer usually ordered Michael to do it after dinner. I walked past it out of habit, then stopped. A paper sticking out of the top. bright red header. My stomach dropped. I pulled it out slowly. It was a draft contract. A sale agreement for the Asheville cabin. Not a listing this time. A pending sale. $1.2 million offer. Buyer, William N. Chandler. Signatures. Buyer, seller me. My name again. The same off-kilter pen stroke as before. They weren't just planning to sell it. They had already found a buyer. And they were hiding it in the trash. I barely had time to snap photos before I heard steps on the stairs. I shoved the papers under my sweater and backed into the pantry just as Michael rounded the corner. He stopped when he saw me. "What are you doing?" His tone flat, already suspicious. I met his gaze, calm. "Getting the cinnamon. Thought I'd make muffins." He didn't smile. "You were in the trash." "No," I said. "I was near it." He walked to the bin and looked inside. Just peelings now. Too late. Then he turned to me, and I saw it for the first time. Not guilt, not worry, fear, just a flicker, but real. "You're digging through our things now," he said. "That's invasive, Mom. You need to let this go. It's not good for your health." There it was again. That word, health. Their favorite lever. I looked him straight in the eye. "Better start watching yours." I left the kitchen and went straight to my room, where I photographed the contract again, every page, and emailed it to William, my lawyer. Then I locked the folder in my suitcase and zipped it shut. The text came 10 minutes later from Jennifer. "Are you okay? You seem tense lately." Tense. That's one word for it. Another is done. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened my drawer and took out the old fountain pen Richard gave me the year he retired. I clicked it open and signed my name, slowly, clearly, on a blank sheet of paper. I held it up, compared it to theirs, and smiled, because now I had proof. And next, I'd have justice. William Robert Harris didn't offer sympathy when I walked into his office. He offered strategy. Oak shelves lined with legal volumes, one clock ticking steadily behind him. He motioned to the chair without a word. I appreciated that. I was tired of people pretending to care when what I needed was a sword. I placed the photos on the table first, the forged contract, the sale terms, the buyer's name, then the original deed, then the note from Karen, notarized and sealed. William reviewed everything in silence. Then he looked up, slow and precise. "They're not just amateurs," he said. "They're arrogant." He laid the forged contract beside my real signature. "The slant is wrong. Stroke weight inconsistent. This isn't a copy. It's imitation." "I know," I said. "And they trashed it?" "In their own kitchen." He let out a low whistle. "You've got enough here to file an injunction, maybe even a criminal complaint. But that won't fix your reputation. You want to stop the sale and expose them." "I want them to stop seeing me as a door they can quietly close." He nodded. "I have a plan," he said. "We're going to build a public record. Legally notarize your ownership, challenge the transaction, then expose the fraud at a scheduled gathering, something they can't talk their way out of." I sat back. "Thanksgiving," he blinked. "You're willing to do this at the family dinner?" "No, after. At the community hall. I'll ask for a family talk, invite a few neighbors. Karen will attend, you'll speak." He smiled. Not wide, but approving. "That'll do it." Then his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and slid it face down. "Start gathering everything," he said. "Prints, statements. The receipt you said you found from the escrow transfer? That could tie them to the money." "I'll find it." He leaned forward, folding his hands. "You're not just stopping a theft, Patricia. You're reclaiming the narrative. Right now, they've cast you as dependent, emotional. But if you stand in front of witnesses and lay this out like an audit," he shook his head, "they won't recover from that." I nodded once. And then my phone buzzed. "Jennifer, again. Where are you today? You're out a lot lately." The timing wasn't lost on me. William noticed. "They're watching. They know something's shifting." "They're right." I stood, collected the papers, and zipped them into my leather case. "Let them worry," I said. They've had months of peace. And now? Now I audit the whole damn family. By the next day, the air in the house had changed. Michael wasn't just cold. He was calculating. He watched me like he was waiting for a slip, some stumble he could point to and say, "See? She's confused." I was standing in the kitchen, heating a mug of broth, when he cornered me. "Mom," he said, voice low, "can we talk?" He always said that when he didn't want me to talk back. I turned, spoon in hand. He leaned against the fridge, arms folded. "I think you've been a little paranoid lately. Digging through old files? Calling lawyers? Not sleeping well." He said it like a diagnosis. "You're worried about my mental state?" I said flatly. "I'm worried about you, yeah. Jennifer and I have been talking." Of course they had. "And we're thinking it might be time to look into conservatorship. Just temporarily, until things are clearer." There it was. I didn't speak right away. Just stared at him. "Do you hear yourself?" I said finally. "You steal my deed, forge my name, hide contracts in the trash, and now you want legal control over my life?" He had the nerve to look pained, like I'd hurt him. "It's not like that," he said. "We're just trying to protect you from getting overwhelmed." Jennifer walked in just then, holding her tablet. She didn't even pretend to smile. "We love you," she said. "But you've been forgetting things. You accused us of theft. That's serious." "I have documentation," I said, "and 2 professionals ready to testify." Jennifer's eyes flickered. Brief panic, then replaced by something colder. "Then maybe it's time we lock the home office," Michael said. "You don't need to be going through sensitive paperwork." I saw the flicker then. Desperation. They were losing control, and they knew it. I nodded once. "Fine." They blinked. "Fine?" Jennifer said. "Yes. Lock the office. Hide whatever's left. But I've already seen enough." And I left my broth to boil over on the stove. Upstairs, I pulled open my nightstand drawer and stared at the file labeled insurance. That's where I'd stuffed the escrow receipt last month, the one I thought I'd misfiled. And there it was, right where I left it, a $20,000 transfer from a company tied to the buyer's name, and a text Jennifer had printed, her mistake attached to it. "Hurry the sale. She's still clueless." I took photos, emailed them to William, and wrote one word in the subject line, "Ready." The next morning, rain tapped the law office windows like a metronome, soft, steady. William sat behind his desk, sleeves rolled, hair slightly out of place. The only sign that what we were doing wasn't routine. "I ran the buyer's name," he said, sliding a file toward me. "William Chandler, private developer. But here's the twist." He flipped the file open. "Your son submitted a power of attorney form last month. It gives him full rights to act on your behalf, including real estate transactions." I stared at the document. My name. My supposed signature. Witnessed. Stamped. But I'd never signed it. Not once. "He used this," William continued, "to authorize the escrow transfer. That's where the $50,000 deposit came from. Chandler wired it in 2 weeks ago. 50,000, not 20. Not a small, early deposit. I had been wrong. They weren't planning to sell. They were almost done. And once the buyer closes," William said, "it'll take litigation to reverse it. But if we act now, in public, we can void it before the title transfer is finalized." I felt my hands tighten in my lap. $50,000 stolen under my name, under my roof, and he still had the nerve to call me a burden? "This is criminal," I said quietly. "Yes," William said, "and it's also personal, which means they'll try to spin it." He leaned forward. "When you confront them, and you will, they'll say they were just trying to help, that it was temporary, that you were confused. They'll say it was love." I muttered, "Exactly." He handed me a folder with copies of every document, the forged power of attorney, the receipt, the flyer, even Jennifer's printed text. "She's still clueless." I placed it gently in my bag. They're planning A. Family talk after dinner, I said. Think they'll use the opportunity to make me out as unwell. Maybe even push for conservatorship, William nodded. Then we control the room. You set the time, invite the people, keep the spotlight on facts. No emotion, no apology. Just truth. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then I asked the question that had been chewing at the edge of my thoughts. If I win this, I still lose them, don't I? William's face didn't change. You already lost the version of them that loved you. The air shifted. Heavy, final, and honest. As I left the office, my phone buzzed. Michael, looking forward to a good Thanksgiving. Let's talk after dinner. Just us. Just us. He had no idea. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the edge of the guest bed, the one with the sagging middle, and listened to the quiet groan of the old heating vents. Rain had stopped. The house creaked like it knew what was coming. I opened my journal. Not the digital kind, a leather-bound one Richard gave me our last Christmas together, the year we both knew time was short. I hadn't written in it since the funeral. But tonight, I needed to put something down. November 26th, 11:47 p.m. They stole from me. But worse, they erased me. Not with malice, with planning, with charm, with a smile after dinner, with sticky notes that told me how to reset the Wi-Fi like I was some lost woman floating through their house like furniture. Tomorrow I won't cry. I'll present. I'll stand. But tonight I want to grieve. Not for the cabin. For the boy who used to leave daffodils outside my bedroom door every spring. I closed the journal and sat in the dark for a long time. The wind picked up outside. Loose leaves scratched the window. Then I saw it. A pamphlet. Slipped under the door. Glossy, folded, pink and white. Serenity Pines, North Carolina's premier assisted living. No note. Just the pamphlet. I didn't touch it. I just stared at it. That was Jennifer's quiet threat. No more warm words. No more soft manipulation. They were done pretending I mattered. I picked up the folder beside my bed, the one with the flyer, the receipts, the contract, and placed the pamphlet neatly on top. I wanted them to sit together. Wanted to remember exactly how far they went when they thought I couldn't stop them. Downstairs, someone opened the fridge. A bottle clinked. Michael's voice. She's not stupid. Jennifer's reply. Then we hurry. They didn't know I was awake, but now I knew everything. I turned out the lamp, laid back on the stiff mattress, and whispered aloud to the empty ceiling. I hope they dress nicely tomorrow. Thanksgiving morning came cold and bright. Jennifer floated through the kitchen like the queen of holiday cheer, humming off key and basting the turkey. Michael hovered by the oven, checking the internal temp like it was the most important decision he'd ever made. Big day, he said without looking at me. I answered, folding napkins at the table, the ones I brought from my old condo. I pressed each corner down with slow precision, like I was flattening the hours ahead. Guests were due by 4. At 10 a.m., I sent the message. Family gathering after dinner. Community hall. Quick update. Nothing formal. Karen confirmed. William packed the exhibit copies. I ironed my blouse, the blue one Richard loved. Simple. Unapologetic. Jennifer peeked into my room just before noon. You okay? She had her concerned voice on. Syrupy, with that fake Midwestern softness she picked up after a podcast binge. Just a little tired, I said, zipping up my case. Big night. She smiled, eyes flicking to the bag. You going somewhere? No, I said, and returned her smile. Just want to look presentable. When dinner began, the house smelled of rosemary and deceit. Michael carved the turkey with theatrical flair. Guests clapped. Jennifer poured wine like it was absolution. Someone passed around candied yams and commented on the lovely remodel. They had no idea they were eating on blood money. Then, right before dessert, Michael stood. He raised his glass. To family, he said, and to the burden at this table. The room shifted. A breath held, then dropped. A few uneasy laughs. Jennifer smirked behind her wine glass like she was waiting for me to crumble. But I didn't. I placed my napkin on the table. Stood. Let the silence work for me. There's something I'd like to share with you all, I said, voice calm, clear. After dessert, I've reserved the community hall just down the road. 10 minutes. You're all welcome. It's family business." Michael blinked. Jennifer's wine glass froze halfway to her lips. "I won't keep you long," I added. "But it's important. And overdue." Then I sat back down. No outburst, no scene, just a loaded invitation. They thought I'd swallow the insult, that I'd bow my head and nibble pumpkin pie like a good little burden. But now the clock had started ticking. The folding chairs scraped the linoleum as people settled in. Some held coffee, others still smelled faintly of turkey and clove. No music, no holiday warmth, just fluorescent lights and tension that clicked in the air like static. Karen stood at the front, briefcase in hand. William was beside her, expression unreadable. I didn't rush. Let them wait for me. At 7:12 p.m., I walked in holding the black folder, the one that held every lie. Michael was standing by the refreshment table, nervously offering decaf to confused neighbors. Jennifer was already seated, legs crossed tight, eyes tracking every move I made like a predator in pearls. "I appreciate you all coming," I said, standing at the front of the room. "I know today's a holiday, but some things can't wait." I laid the folder on the table. "I invited you here because something has happened, something I can't ignore, and I want you all to hear the truth, from me. Not whispers, not rumors." Karen stepped forward. Her voice was crisp, professional. "I'm Karen Moore, licensed notary. On November 22nd, Patricia Davis requested I examine a set of real estate documents involving her property in Asheville. What I found was deeply concerning." She opened the folder and removed the forged power of attorney. This document was submitted as legal permission for her son, Michael Davis, to act on her behalf. She held it up. "It's a forgery." Gasps. A few murmurs. Jennifer sat still. Michael's jaw clenched. William took over. "My name is William Harris. I'm representing Mrs. Davis. Over the last week, we've gathered evidence of a fraudulent real estate transaction involving the illegal listing and pending sale of her property, a cabin worth over $1.2 million. He laid out the receipts. The flyer, the $50,000 escrow deposit, the notarized statement from Karen, the text from Jennifer, "Hurry the sale." She's still clueless. The room had gone quiet, that deep, waiting kind of quiet. The kind that settles before a storm breaks or a verdict lands. William didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. He placed a final document on the table. "This," he said, tapping the top page, "is a wire transfer from the buyer's escrow account, $50,000. Already withdrawn under Patricia Davis's forged authority. That money is now traceable and illegal." He turned the page. Text messages confirm intent. Timeline matches bank activity. Everything has been cataloged and submitted. I looked at the guests, friends, neighbors, two of Richard's old colleagues who had stopped by for dessert and stayed out of curiosity. Now they look like witnesses at a sentencing. Karen stepped forward again. "The forged power of attorney has been reported and legally challenged. This evening, Patricia will sign a notarized reversal. The sale is now void, pending confirmation." Michael stood abruptly. "This is insane. You're making a circus out of a misunderstanding. You were always emotional, Mom, but this is just cruel." He looked to the crowd for sympathy. No one moved. Jennifer leaned forward, voice tight. "You could have handled this privately." "I tried," I said. "You left me no room." And then, quietly, without drama, I reached into my folder and pulled out the printout of Michael's Thanksgiving toast, transcribed from my phone. I read it aloud. "To the burden at this table," gasps. Someone muttered, "Jesus." I kept my eyes on him the whole time. "You wanted to reduce me to a joke before dessert. I figured I'd return the favor with facts." He dropped into his chair, face pale. Jennifer looked like a woman calculating her next marriage. I turned to Karen. "Let's finish this." She pulled out the final document, a notarized deed reinstating sole control of the Asheville property to me, voiding all unauthorized activity. I signed it with Richard's old fountain pen. Karen stamped it. "Deed secured," she said, 2 words. But they landed like a gavel. A neighbor in the front row clapped once. Others followed, hesitant at first, then steady. Michael didn't move. Jennifer sat frozen. William packed up the documents like a surgeon putting away his tools. "I'll be filing for restitution," he said almost casually. "Civil and criminal. We'll also seek recovery of the $50,000 in press charges for fraud." Jennifer stood. "You'll destroy us." I picked up the folder and tucked it under my arm. "No, you did that yourselves." The echo of Karen's stamp still hung in the air when I stepped away from the table. No applause this time. No cheers. Just a deep, uneasy silence. The kind that happens when people start reevaluating everything they thought they knew about someone. Michael stood with his fists clenched, not speaking. Jennifer turned to him, voice low but slicing. "I told you not to rush it." He flinched like she'd slapped him. Karen handed me the notarized copy of the deed, now sealed with authority. It felt heavier than it should have, like it carried every year I'd swallowed my voice in that house. "Congratulations," she said softly. "It's yours again." "It never stopped being mine," I said, "but thank you for helping the world remember that." William joined us by the folding table. "Restitution filings begin Monday. I'll handle it. You won't need to say another word to them unless you want to." "I don't," I said. "Not unless it's under oath." That got a few gasps. Someone stifled a laugh, sharp and surprised. Michael looked around the room like he'd just realized none of it was a dream. "Seriously?" he hissed. "You're going to take your own son to court? Over property?" "No," I said. "I'm taking a thief to court." Jennifer made one last attempt. Voice all sugar again. "You're going to ruin us. People talk, Patricia. They'll think we're monsters." "They won't have to think," I said. "They'll just have to read the evidence." A few guests stood, murmuring goodbyes. Some offered nods to me, cautious but respectful. One woman squeezed my arm gently as she passed and whispered, "It's about time." By the time the room cleared, Michael was pacing. Jennifer refused to look at me. Karen packed up her case. William handed me a second folder. Backup copies, notarized, and ready for court. The moonlight cut sharp through the tall community hall windows. Karen turned to me and said the words that felt like a final verdict. "It's done." I nodded. "Yes, it is." Michael said nothing. But when I looked at him, really looked, I saw something new. Not rage, not guilt, fear. Because for the first time, he couldn't control the story, and neither could she. As I walked toward the exit, I passed by the refreshment table, where they'd poured coffee for show, for charm. I picked up a leftover cup. Cold now, just like them. By December 10th, the court order came through. William called just after 9 a.m., voice tight with satisfaction. "We have it," he said. $50,000 in restitution. A lien placed on their bank accounts. They can't touch your name, your property, or any joint assets again. They're locked out. I didn't say thank you. I just said good. That afternoon, Jennifer tried to access the cabin's property site, the one she'd registered under her maiden name. Rejected. Michael attempted to withdraw the remaining escrow from a joint account. Flagged. Blocked. Frozen. They weren't just powerless now. They were panicking. And I wanted them to feel it. A week earlier, they tried painting me as confused, weak, in decline. Now I was a ghost on their credit reports. A firewall wrapped around everything they thought they owned. I moved through my new space like someone building a fortress. Slow, precise, every drawer labeled, every document locked. That day, I signed the official title for the Asheville cabin. Clean, cleared, recorded in my name with full legal protections. The notary asked if I wanted to designate a beneficiary. "Not yet," I said. "Let the dust settle. I'm not done deciding who deserves what." Because no one was getting it out of guilt again. That night, Jennifer left a voicemail. Her voice cracked, desperate, no longer rehearsed. "We didn't know it would go this far. We were scared. Michael, he's not eating, he's broken. Good. I saved that one too. let it sit on my phone like a souvenir. By Friday, their real estate agent quietly withdrew the house listing. Client conflict was the official reason. But I knew the truth. No one wants to buy a house built on fraud. One of Michael's former colleagues forwarded me an internal email chain. Apparently, there were whispers of cutting him loose from 2 consulting contracts. The firm didn't want his name showing up in the press. I didn't share it. I just read it, sipped my tea, and deleted it. Let them feel what it's like to be slowly erased. Not with fury, but with precision. Like I was taught to do, one line at a time. That's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't always need a scream. Sometimes it just needs a balance sheet. And mine is almost clear.